If you get a new inspection on a new build home, it's still going to be 50 pages long.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It's the Off Market Operator Radio Show. And I am your host, Mike DeHaan, here with my co-hosts, Dan Austin and Dylan Cook. And on these Wednesday shows, we talk about what's going on in our real estate businesses, what you should probably know about the market concerning your real estate business, and kind of just whatever else you feel like for the week. And so on this random Wednesday, I guess we'll be shortly after Labor Day, we're recording this. It's starting to get into, I would say, what is traditionally our busier season with our real estate business, getting September, October time frame. August is traditionally very slow. So if you're going through August and you're like, man, this kind of sucks ass, it wasn't just you. I promise. It's very much like industry wide. And it's funny, if you go back to 2021, Dan, I forget, I think October, November, it was like half of our revenue for the entire year came in those 2 months.
Really?
We were rich.
That much?
We were rich.
Yeah. Dude, we made like 500 grand in like 2 months. It was awesome.
That's fun. I was looking at last year's stuff and it was almost flip-flopped. My August was a lot better than my September. But this year I only did 2 deals in August, but we have 5 in escrow between now and the 20th.
There you go. Nice.
So
yeah, it's traditionally been pretty hot for us. I think though, I don't know what winter's like over there in Cincinnati, but up here in Washington State, it gets like real dark and real cold, like quick, and it sticks around a while. So we always end up
months.
Yeah, right. Sticks around until June. And so there's always this, I would say, like urgency that comes from sellers where they're trying to get stuff done so they don't end up having to like sell or move like in like
it seems like
cold.
It slows down like into the fall, but that's when also the landlord action picks up because they always want to sell before the end of the year. So kind of going into the end of the year kind of balances out. And then you get back onto that retail side where people are like, well, I need to move now. All of a sudden when the sun pokes out in like March, April timeframe.
Yeah. And we had some last year. We did, I think it was 5 or 6 deals in January. And most of those were because like people wanting to wait until the new year to sell things.
Totally true.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what I always tell people too. Like, don't, just because you're expecting it to be slower during the holidays, don't pause your marketing like just Thanksgiving, Christmas time, because that money that you spend then is going to be what pays your bills in January when stuff.
Yeah. If you stop, you remember like when we first started and like our competitors were like, oh, I take the month of December off. I don't do anything. And then guess what happens in January? You basically take it off too because it's slow because you shut everything down. It's like, I totally get you don't want to work as much during the holidays, family, all that stuff, but market, do the bare minimum, keep it going because that's what makes your Q1 like super badass.
Yeah. Well, that first January, I remember we like doubled down on that because we just made a bunch of money in October. And that was actually when we discovered the concept of a lead manager. And we brought on Ricardo at the end of January. And then we were slinging deals. And then that March was when we had like our huge month where we just made the other half of our money for 20.
The other half of our money.
Yeah, just do it in 2 different months out of the 12. But it's funny you brought in Ricardo. And I've been looking at 2023 and 2024 and like my business pretty much has looked the same as far as like number of deals. We'll do a little bit more revenue this year, but I've also flipped a little bit more this year. But marketing spend's been about the same. And it's kind of been just like kind of dull. There's not much excitement. But now that I just hired this EA, her first day was the first, I almost got like this like vigor kind of re-initiated. I don't know what else to say, but now I'm going down a different path, like doing all these Loom videos, all this kind of stuff. So that's been good. I think that's been a new business change for me.
Yeah. So I guess this is a really good talking point for people that are listening that are maybe about to hire their first person, have been a sole operator for a while. What is like give us like the 2 biggest tips for someone who has been a, successful operator by themselves and is now bringing on somebody that they're handing the reins to a little bit in their business?
Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind is like the concept of hiring someone to free up your time to do more things. One is make sure you're actually freeing up your time to be more productive and not just like taking vacation or doing something. Yeah. But 2, everyone can hear that concept, conceptually understand it, but until you actually feel it and you see that person actually do the work and it's done right, like that just happened to me. And I don't know, it just creates something like, holy shit, like this is real. And, like, so for example, we pull manually foreclosure data pretty much every week. And I created some Loom videos. She did it. It's Tuesday morning, and all of them are already preset where they need to be. And we started dialing on them this morning. And that usually takes me probably like 3 hours to do over the weekend.
Nice. Was that a good aha moment for you that like, oh, I understand?
Yeah. And now my brain is thinking, what else can I get rid of?
Yeah.
And you know, and so she'll do.
She's going to be full time before you know, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. She wants it. I hope so, man.
Yeah.
But even with the rental properties, right? Like, so now I was playing a property manager 8%, but we're going to bring that all back in house, you know, for all that stuff.
So that's a good, I would say, like result. And wait until you get to the point too where we're at. We closed 10 deals in August, like closed through escrow. I couldn't tell you a single address, a single anything about.
I don't know any of them.
Yeah.
Except for ones here in Spokane, but that's about it. Yeah. That's just because we live here.
Yeah. Which makes sense for your guys' business model. But like, I think, you know, if I have her, I eventually hire an acquisitions person, and then myself, and then maybe one other like project manager, dispo, whatever that may look like. I'm happy with that. And I think I can kill it with just those people. Right. And I can still be involved in the day-to-day, know the addresses, meet some of the sellers. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So
you're okay with that right now because that's your next step. Once you get there, you're like, what if I didn't have to do it?
Right. Seriously.
But so that's a good result. What do you think, like for somebody that was listening and wanted to have that same outcome with their first hire, what do you think is like the reason you were able to achieve that with this person? Because a lot of people don't have successful first hires.
So yeah, I don't know if I told you this, Mike, but I actually have a previous relationship with this new assistant. Mm-hmm. She was my lead technician actually from my pharmacy days. And so I already knew she was reliable. I already knew she's a good worker. And I knew that she's resourceful. Like she could figure things out on her own. And she was already kind of in charge of the other techs when we were worked there. My biggest hesitation was, we both don't know what we don't know because she didn't have an admin role. Like she didn't know some of this stuff, but I figured, you know, I've got most of this stuff kind of down already. It's just learning what I know and passing it on to her. But I did do the DISC assessments. I went through 6 or 7 interviews. I gave her the same
6 or 7 interviews with her.
No. In total. No, okay. Sorry. No.
Like, Jesus Christ. Fucking marry her already. Jesus.
I still interviewed a whole bunch of other people, and I just truly felt she was the best fit at the end of it.
Gotcha. That's good stuff. I like that too. You're gonna like have, I don't know, like this whole new, well, you got a baby coming too, so that'll be super helpful to have her. But I was gonna say, you're gonna have this whole new like respect for your time, I think, after this too. When you hire that person, they come in and they start becoming productive. Now you're like, Mike said, it was like, what else can you hand off to them? And like, what does that next phase look like? I do like your idea of like the next person coming, stepping in on the back end of your transactions, right? So you've got her helping you out with all this stuff on the front end. And then if you have a person on the back end of those transactions, like whether that's a project manager or a dispositions manager, like you're saying, I mean, that could be awesome for you. That could save a ton of your time because you're clearly good at all of it. You've been successful. And it's just, where's the best place, best use of your time at that state? If that remains on acquisitions, keep doing acquisitions and start hiring out around yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's kind of the plan going forward for now.
Yeah, and so did you recruit her, or did she like apply to a job listing that you had?
So I put it out on, what was the website you guys mentioned at KeysCon?
Wise Hire.
No, not Wise Hire, something else. I forget.
Previous KeysCon.
Well Found. Yeah, I did that. But also just posted on like all my social media channels. And she was at a gig. I didn't go like recruit her. She just saw it. And I think based on, you know, we had a good working relationship before, I think she trusts me and she reached out.
That's cool.
There you go. Right on. And then hopefully if you have to fire, it doesn't get really weird.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
It's a you, it's a me, not you thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, you know,
cool, guys.
Firing people is a part of business.
It is. And it's not always because they weren't good at their job. That's the unfortunate part about business. Sometimes there's misalignment of skills. Sometimes they do suck at their job. Sometimes your business is pivoting rapidly. And when you hire that person, you were actually taking a step forward, or you're pivoting, or you're taking a little bit of a gamble or a risk in your business, and you needed people for it. And it doesn't always work out that way. And so sometimes your gamble or your risk is just that, and you lose money, and you're saying, hey, sorry, I can't keep you on board. I think the lesson in all of it is don't ever be afraid to hire, you know, because you're scared of paying them, or you're scared that you can't accomplish what you're setting out to be, because then you'll never know. You'll never have an answer to that, because you'll be the fear will take over. And
with that, Dan, I'm paying her $20 an hour for starting at 20 to 25 hours a week. You multiply that out, I mean, it's going to cost me $30,000 on the whole year.
Yeah.
And you can make that one deal.
If you work for her for a whole year, what if it's only 6 months to find out that it's not a good fit or that you don't need that person in your business? So you think about it on that level. You're right. It's 30 grand is like one deal, but it really might only be like half a deal before, you have to make a change or whatever. And I'm saying that as in a way is like, don't always think about you risking the full annual salary. Because like there's actually, Mike and I have hired a shit pile of people and not all of them have gone full cycle. I would say a third of them have gone more than a year.
What's your updated number, Mike? Do you know? Because I know you've said on a podcast before how many total people you've had through your organization.
Let me look at how many people we've had like on our Slack. So if you include all the people that we've had for Simply Leads, it's going to be a lot now.
Yeah, that'd be a lot.
Like we've had a freaking like, I'm trying to think of the right word, like a village of people over in Egypt, pretty much.
It's one apartment building.
Yeah. So like honestly though, so if I go and I look at our total members, we have 40 active team members. So that's people that like currently work for us, which will include all of our other ones. We've had 96 members total that have been involved in our Slack at one point or another. So that's 56 people that have worked for us at one point that no longer do.
Yeah.
Some capacity.
Yeah. So that's like
and since 2021, right?
No, it'll be since 2020.
Since 2020. Okay. So almost 5 years.
Yeah. Really, it's not like we're chopping people's heads off. Some of it's meant to be temporary work. A lot of it's virtuals and VAs and stuff like that you're using for a specific thing. And we've also had several companies but you just get used to it, I guess.
So, I mean, the point of all this is like, you're 4 years through business. You've had 96 total people through, 40 still active. And if you would ask yourself in the beginning of 2020, do you think it'd look like that? And the answer is probably hell no.
No,
but you just have to adapt as you move along.
Why would we need all those people is what we would have thought. And if we were running a traditional wholesale business this whole time, we wouldn't have needed that many people.
Sure.
I mean, you just don't. I mean, there's some of the bigger markets where people might have a sales team of 4 or 5 plus a bunch of other VAs and stuff, but it's not necessarily required for every single operator.
Yeah, and sometimes people go quick, like fucking Pat Stevers, bro.
You'll
probably listen to this too.
He's
worked
done
for
it
us
like
for
2
hours.
Days. 2 days. I gave him like 2 hours. He said it wasn't cut out. He wasn't cut out for it.
Yeah, talked the big game and then came in. Congratulations. So if you listen to this, I still hold a grudge because like, why waste my time, bro? So that's yeah, man. There's all sorts of Dust. Remember that dude?
Oh yeah, Dust was a great guy.
Yeah,
just kind of his own problem. He was his own biggest problem.
Showed up with the Pace Morby hat on every day. Right?
That should have been your first red flag.
Well, he could calculate a creative finance deal. Like he was so smart. And he would he was like Pace Morby's, I don't know, A+ student, but he could never close a deal because he was just talk too many numbers. I mean, he would make your head spin. He'd be like, well, we could do a 17th mortgage. Like, what? What did you just say? Did I hear a niner?
Yeah. But anyways, so one of the things that I regularly notice, and I've said this on other shows before, like higher level entrepreneurs, they view staff, team members as a mostly expendable resource, which might sound bad, I guess, to like a small business, but
I wouldn't call it that. I would call it I would call it a switch that you will have to turn on and off at a given notice, because that's what business requires. And as a small business or even medium-sized business, you should be pushing the limits if you're trying to grow. Like if you're not trying to grow, you won't ever be pushing the limits. But if you're trying to push the limits, it's something you have to be able to turn on and off like quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like making offers too, where like people are starting out and they're like terrified to get a contract if they don't have the entire thing planned out. It's like, you got to shoot the shot and like just sort of see what happens with it. Right. And just like with deals, the great thing with houses, there's hundreds of millions of houses in the United States, right? Something like that. I don't know how many houses there are. There's probably 100 million.
And there's always 100 million people trashing them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of people that are trashing houses. There's a ton of them to always choose from. And just like with humans, this is something that I say to one of our other senior staff all the time when they get kind of tied up on stuff. It's like, the great thing about people is there's like 8 billion of them. If we need to find a replacement for somebody, we probably can.
Yeah. Yep, totally.
But anyways,
I mean, about the, how many houses there are in the United States and whatever, but, we talk about on this show frequently about affordability problems, and how no one can afford a house, and we'll get into interest rates and policy decisions. But one thing that's always kind of been, deflationary in nature is technology. Right? Technology is supposed to make things cheaper over time, but we haven't really seen that with houses. until I guess there's some companies out there who are claiming that they can basically 3D print these homes using these big printers and this special proprietary cement that builds houses in half the time at half the cost.
What a great segue, by the way, Dylan. We talked before the show that we were going to go down this rabbit hole, and I was like, I don't know how the fuck we're coming back. So
yeah, I actually thought you were leading me into that. So good job.
Good, you're good. You'd be a good news anchor.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about that.
But in other news today,
I got a face for radio, so
yeah. But so yeah, we've seen these 3D printed houses. So you sent over this video where they're like basically using this cement printing machine that looks like it's like putting frosting on cake.
Does look delicious.
Yeah, right. To make these houses.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking
iterations of this though too.
I was thinking.
Yeah, go for it.
Let me just tell you what I wanted to say. So I was thinking that when they're printing it, what if like it was in Spokane and like a homeless person, homeless people around, just like walk into it and it's just like a muddy mess. Would it be like, like?
I think they have someone on site during the pouring stages of this. So I don't know.
I agree, but I'm just saying. Have you been to Spokane?
I mean, yes, I have actually once.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah. I mean, he has. We had lunch.
I met you, Dan, if you remember.
Oh, that's right. You were here in Spokane like last summer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, there's been like different iterations of this. This one's like the concrete pouring. We've seen people talking about the fab homes for a while. There's people that were doing like the different like homes out of the recycled objects, like the storage containers and different things. None of them seem to have really stuck. I mean, I guess I don't know the full benefit of doing this concrete method that you sent over. But like, I don't know, my immediate concern is what happens when like the wall just like cracks, because concrete cracks all the time. Like, how do they prevent that? And like, isn't it going to be like insanely heavy? I don't know. Are there concerns over like earthquakes and shit? Like,
so all good questions, and some of them I think remain unanswered. But they are building like these small subdivisions like this area in Texas. So I guess only time will tell. Yeah, but I have some of the same things like.
Yeah, where every deal that we've ever tried to do down there has major foundation issues that make the house unviable for some reason.
It is an interesting,
and I don't think these have basements. Like it has to be like on a slab or crawl space.
Could you do it? You could probably do a basement, couldn't you? Don't you think?
I don't know. Can you put footers and then built the cement on top of it?
Why not?
Probably.
I mean, why not? Yeah. I like it's been around for like 10 years. I've seen many videos over the years, like the iterations, and like there was one company that was actually they're like making them like badass, like really cool, modern and stuff. At the end of the day, though, they're still pretty freaking ugly. And then if you don't want them to be ugly, then you need to drywall them and you need to put siding on them at some level. So then that basically just takes away most all of your cost savings, I would imagine, because you have a bunch of work you'd have to do to side it and to drywall and do all that other whatever the stuff is that you would do to a home. I just don't know that they'll ever catch on. I think from an affordable housing standpoint, a prefabbed home, like what they're doing now. So that you'll have the ones that like ship as like a unit, like a trailer basically, but they'll also have ones which they stole this from the commercial industry where you could like literally build like tilt up walls, like they would build them right there on the ground and just tilt them up instead of like framing walls. So they do that for houses now in factories. So they're kind of like normally like they're kind of prefabbed homes, but they're also kind of homes. Like they're like houses, and they would be hard to tell that they weren't like the typical trailer because they weren't necessarily built to like ride on wheels. They were just built in a factory. The walls were, and then they can ship them to the site and stand them all up together. So the idea being is you're able to build it faster. That to me would make more sense from an affordability standpoint than big, ugly concrete houses that nobody actually wants to live in.
Well, and that's the key too, is like the ones you're talking about actually look good. So like I'll share this. You guys can check this out on YouTube. But like these houses, like they're trying to make them look like normal houses.
Right.
But they just kind of don't. Like, I don't know, if people wanted a cheap house, they didn't care what they look like. They would just live in a mobile home.
But like, when they're, printing this, do they frame, I don't know, all the mechanicals, like your plumbing, that's all probably going to be on the inside still.
The video you sent says because there's a gap in the walls, though it's like always does like this like oval shape thing. That's where you can run your wires and your pipes.
So great. If there's ever a problem, you have to bust through concrete instead of drywall.
That's what I was thinking, right? Exactly. You're like, oh, this will be fun. Nightmare. But then that concrete you're cutting is literally the structure of your house. So you probably can't cut it.
Yeah. And what do insurance companies think with these things? Are they more expensive? Are they less expensive? I have no idea.
They won't insure them.
Probably.
Even though they're probably good to insure as far as other than falling down, you can't burn them. Like, what are you going to do?
All it'll take is like a wall to like fall on somebody, and then it's like impossible to freaking replace. It's not like you can just truss in a new wall. Like what happens if you
bring back in the printer? Yeah, you can't do that.
Right? What happens if like let's say like a car crashed in the side of the house, something extreme? How do you fix it? I don't understand.
You have to get your 3D printer out there and have it just squirt shit all over the side of your house. I don't know.
It's
like toothpaste.
You just go to Home Depot and rent a concrete printer.
Yeah, exactly, dude. You're like, look, I made this statue. Yeah.
So my point in sharing this is we talk about affordability being a problem. Houses are too expensive. And even talking to some builders here, not like spec home builders, but if they're building at $150, $200 a square foot, $200 a square foot, 2,000 square feet, that's $400,000. That's more than the price, like the median home price where we live. Yeah. So just building the traditional sense economically isn't there unless you're like these high end selling $1 million plus homes.
But let's also have a capitalistic conversation about this, right? Let's say that in one of these, whether it's concrete houses or the prefabbed houses, that they can go and they can get the build cost to be half or a third of what it currently is. Do we really honestly believe that they are going to lower the price of houses?
No.
God, no.
The lots are going to increase.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. They're just going to make more profit.
Yeah. I think if they could come into like a subdivision here in Cincinnati and say, we have this new house, it's 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet, and it's $215,000 and it's in a decent part of town, or $250,000. I think people would buy that over a traditional house that's selling for like the low 300s.
But you're assuming that they would come in and sell for $215,000 when they're like, well, price per square foot says this should sell for $400. Let's price them at $375. Right? They're going to still price them.
So you're just saying they're going to take the above and reduce the price by a very small percentage.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. I mean, everything in the real estate market is based on appraised value, based on square feet mostly, right? So it's like, it is what it is. I mean,
they're not going to sell them affordably out of charity, right? All of these things end up going to
what likely would happen is they would sell it at market value like they do now, like a trailer, and then it just appreciates like a car over time. So you're left with the value of the land and then some.
That's worst case. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So, I do think that there's a solution in between, like I think the whole ADU or multi-generational living or something to like from an affordable housing standpoint and a real estate investment standpoint. I mean, imagine if you could just you own a single family home anywhere in the city and you could just crane over an ADU and just set it on blocks or on a foundation, have somebody come in there, put a little concrete slab out there. You got your utilities there and like a train car style thing like that, just literally just cranes in, boop, plops it in. Now you have another unit with a kitchen, bathroom, everything. Like that to me,
as an investor, I would do that if it was economical. Right.
If it was economical, and it totally could be if they were priced to be economical. And you don't look at the capitalist mindset and say, no, well, I think grandma and grandpa would pay this much, for it just because they want an extra space in their house and they can afford it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess here's my question: would you guys do that for your primary homes?
This like concrete style?
No, just like what Dan just said. If you had the ability to just place an ADU,
no, I would not.
Exactly, because
I would for additional space. Like if I could crane in something and have like a sick ass gym in my backyard, like that would be cool
for yourself, right?
Yeah, he's saying if you'd rent it out to somebody else.
Yeah, if you had to rent it out. No, so that's my argument.
Yeah, but I'm not like a poor millennial or Gen Z. Like I don't care.
So totally,
but that's most of the population. If they could reduce their mortgage by like $1,000 a month, they would.
It's like forcing your house to be a house hacking.
Yeah. Which is already a small portion of the population. So where I'm going to with that is like people always talk about well, we're looking towards these ADUs, increased density. That's going to be a cultural shift in American society that would have to happen. It
has to have a shift in laws first, and then it has to be driven by economics and then a cultural shift, right?
Yeah,
because you have to have the funny thing enough, culture can be influenced by money. That's weird. And so given enough economic constraints, that'll become the cultural norm. Like we see in Seattle right now, they've had the laws, maybe a decade ahead of us. People are going over there. They're not maybe their primaries, but they're taking investment properties and hacking them up. California, you're seeing the same thing where they're just like shoving random boxes onto lots and there's no parking or anything. And they will sell them for a shit ton of money, more than they paid for them, because the economics are such that it's still like to rent I'm just going to throw a number out there to rent a studio nearby might be $3,000. So they're like, well, shit, I can plock an ADU in my backyard for 300. That's 1% rule. That makes tons of sense.
Yeah, you see a lot in Austin too. Like if you look at Airbnbs in Austin, pretty much every single one is like an ADU.
They're just offsetting their new tax burden. That's all they're doing.
Well, totally right.
No shit.
But like all that stuff, like it only works with the affordable housing issue if people like the people in control, which are the people that own the properties, want to support that. Which realistically, most of us that own our own homes do not want to do that. Right? Like it's not my ideal living situation. Even if I could like rent it out for, a few grand a month, I'm not going to go and pop a freaking thing in my backyard and give up some of my space to rent that out just because.
Yeah, but you also don't live in an affordable housing crisis situation or density situation, right? So some of these bigger cities where you see the economics are driving it, it's going to happen, and it is happening.
But like what I'm saying is like that has to be a decision that's made by the person that's not in a financially distressed situation. Right? Like the people that want that are the people that don't have the home. The people that have the home were like, no, fuck that. It's your problem.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess
this is kind of why I think rent by the room has come more popular in some of these major areas, is because it becomes more profitable for that person who owns the home. And now they're renting each bedroom out for like $1,000 to $1,500 a month. And there's 5 bedrooms or whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think would be more likely would be like a landlord if they have a single family home. Like we could do this with Frederick, Dan. I do it in 5 seconds. So we have this house. Yeah. It's a good sized house. Is on the front of like a slightly oversized corner lot. If we could easily pop up another unit in the back of that and rent that out too, especially because it has a separate entry area, absolutely. Yeah. But I guarantee if there was a homeowner that owned that house, they would very likely not.
Yeah, homeowners I don't see doing it as much straight away. I think homeowners would do it more from a big, and I have seen this, and it is the people with money it's millennials that kind of have some money, but their parents do, is they buy a nicer house that has like a mother-in-law suite, and then they live together with their in-laws because then they can afford the nicer house. Yep. And so you see that a lot. So I could see somebody saying, oh, I love this house. What if we just stuck mom in the trailer that looks cool and hip and we just pay money for it? So I could see that, but I think the economics, if the economic driver is going to be more towards the investor. And if you think about it this way, all these hedge funds that have been buying up single family homes, and then they go and influence the law to make it so locally you can just drop an ADU that's super cheap and easy. And now all of a sudden they have a bunch of prefab ADUs they can drop on these, and then they increase the cash flow on their properties, increase the value of their, already large portfolio. I can see like those types of drivers affecting it, and not necessarily because of affordable housing, but because there was somebody that could make more money. If the drivers are there, they have to be there. For us, like to build a stick-built ADU on Frederick, for example, doesn't make any sense. It's, if it's $200 a square foot to build this thing, and we need to be, say, 800 square feet at least. Yeah. What is that? 160,000 to build? Are you going to invest 160,000 in a market where there's no ADUs for the silly appraisers to actually get a real true comp from? Probably not. It's too big of a risk.
You don't want to be the unicorn in the neighborhood.
Exactly.
Right? It's a great way to just get undervalued for what you have. But I don't know. Like ultimately the affordability housing issues super complicated, and I don't think that the solution is building cheaper houses. I think that'll just lead to more profitable.
Related to that, there's a common known expression, like they don't build them like they used to, right? And a lot of this gets, I think, placed on marketed as corporate greed or late stage capitalism or whatever it may be. But if you just think about it, like from these builders are trying to make and increase their revenues year over year, but the profits try to stay the same. But their input costs, their raw materials are going up. So now they're buying shittier materials to try to keep those low. Yeah. Because if they raise their prices too high, they're going to price themselves out of the market. So now it's just like this dilemma where the quality of houses, quote unquote, are getting worse, even though they're new builds. And it's just from the fact that everything on the input side is getting more expensive as well.
Absolutely. It's a problem. And if you actually look at like the engineering specs for a lot of building materials, most of them are like the OSB, like, which is like most of your structure is like 50-year lifespan. So it's like your house shouldn't last more than 50 years. Is basically
or 2x4s aren't even 2x4s anymore. They're like slightly smaller or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah. There's all that stuff like Windows. I'm sure I haven't looked at Windows, but their engineered life is probably like 6 years. Yeah. You know, because they don't seem to last that long.
I know. No shit.
Yeah, and builder grade, I mean, has a bad rep to it. But because you see problems, like if you get a new inspection on a new build home, it's still going to be 50 pages long.
Oh yeah, like, there's a lot of exactly.
Yeah. So I guess what's the moral of the story here? Don't be poor.
Yeah, well, I guess poor, don't be poor. Or someone solve this. I do think if you can, no, not going to solve, but do something in this affordable housing space and actually do it right, you'd be worth a lot of money.
Yeah. I think that the one thing that everyone can do is work their ass off to try and like buy their way out of these problems, because along with the fact that all these problems exist in the United States is, you know, people like to rip on the US for various things. If you go and you talk to people from pretty much any other country, they will be envious at the availability of opportunity that exists in the US and how easy it is to like start a business and make money and like be taken seriously. Like even when I was at the going to the Alex Hormozy thing again for the next round on tomorrow. But when I went a few months ago, those people there from Germany, from Australia, from Canada, from South America, from the UK, from all over, and just talking to like actual entrepreneurs, like not the Instagram people, but like actual like people trying to build businesses from those countries. They're like, the United States is the best country in the world to fucking build business, right? To like to try and like make your own money, even though things like culturally seem better in these other places. If you are somebody that's a go-getter, you have more availability to be that way here. Than
you just see that internationally, but you also see that within the continental United States anyway. People leaving California to go to Texas or Florida where there's no income tax. They're going to save
the best
$20 million just by moving their like where their headquarters are at.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Totally. And so, you know, if you don't want to have to deal with this affordability issue, I guess make it so that you don't have to.
So the question is, do you want to be cultured but poor, or rich and not give a fuck?
What does that mean? Culture.
Well, you said like these other European countries might have culture, but it's not as good to do business, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to live in California where the beaches are beautiful, or do you want to live in Texas where you got to get bit by snakes and make a shit ton of money?
Yeah, it's a question. Or right now with the internet, you can live in California and make money in Texas.
This is very true.
Yeah, I was gonna say virtual obviously plays a part in there, but I mean, someone that we've interviewed on the pod before just said, you know, revenue solves a lot of problems, right? He just closed 2 deals, and he's like,
solves all problems.
Yeah, and so relating this to people listening, like honestly, just making more money solves a lot of problems. And yes, like money's not the end all be all, but it sure helps.
Yeah, I mean, you know. That's a good quote.
It solves a lot of problems.
Yeah, a good quote from comedian Daniel Tosh, who's really old. Is people say money doesn't buy happiness, but does buy a jet ski. You ever seen an unhappy person on a jet ski?
Yeah, it buys a house for you to live in.
Yeah,
buys you jet skis.
Yeah. So, anyways, so we'll see what happens. I mean,
I'm curious what this landscape looks like, you know, 5 to 10 years from now.
My strong belief is that affordable housing is part of the political engine as well. And it's getting politicized just like a lot of these other things. And there is lots of opportunity for housing. It's just who is in control, that's creating the restriction, because supply and demand is the fundamentals of economics. And we got nothing but land, and we got lots of houses across the country, but somehow we have people that are homeless.
And ultimately what'll happen with the feds too, because what they can't control is they can't control the supply line directly. They can't control the cost for labor directly, right? Not in a way that makes things cheaper. They can do so much, provide incentives, but they can't like force people to do things. So, but what they can control is the, like what it takes for people to get into homes. And so what we're going to see is, like we've continued to see, is more subsidies towards first-time home buyers, you know, different kinds of mortgage programs that are backed by the federal government, so people can get into things that are quote unquote more affordable, when really they're just like longer drawn out debt, 40-year mortgages, 50-year mortgages,
down
things
payment
like
assistance,
down payment assistance, all that sort of stuff is going to be the big patch that they just like stick and pretend like it's going to fix anything when it's actually not. And then, it'll kick the can down the lane for the next 6 years until it's somebody else's problem. And that's
exactly. And I would argue too, that's not an affordable housing solution. No. It's a GDP solution. It's how do we get more gross domestic product, housing and construction. Boom, go.
Yeah, because of how big it is. And honestly, we're a spending based economy. And so they just want people to keep spending more money.
Yep. So there you go. So go buy a bunch of houses, everybody, because the U.S. government will keep inflating your values.
They'll go up in prices.
Yeah, when they start giving everyone, what did we talk about a couple weeks ago, $25,000 for down payment assistance.
Yeah.
That's going to add $25,000 right to the top of all your properties. So there you go. Cool. Anything else, guys, to wrap up?
I'm good.
No, right on. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. You guys have a great start to your September. And remember, guys, lean into that marketing. Start pushing those leads that you have in your pipeline, because you have a little bit of time before the holidays when everyone kind of starts to shut down and get weird. So it's time to start making that fall money now, because once you get to November, December, it's going to get a little bit slower. So don't screw around. Enjoy the rest of the end of your summer, but also make sure that you're putting the work in too, because I don't know, no one wants to be going broke into the holidays. It's like the worst time to have a slump. So right on. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
See you.